This is how you make homemade marinara sauce in the same amount of time it takes to cook the noodles. During the week, things are busy, I'm tired, and I don't always feel like launching into a big cooking operation. And a lot of us overthink dinner. Sometimes it's nice to just take a step back, take a chill pill, and just make some good old pasta with sauce. Some store-bought sauce is totally fine, but most of them are kind of not great. And I find that the really good ones tend to be like 10 bucks a jar. So I like to make my own. To make a good basic marinara sauce, you don't need very many ingredients, and you probably have most of these ingredients on hand already. So all I need are tomatoes, obviously, olive oil, or really any kind of oil will do. I have some red pepper flakes, totally optional, garlic, salt, and then some Parmesan cheese just to finish things off. As far as tomatoes go, I do like to look for tomatoes that just contain tomatoes or tomatoes and tomato juice. I find that the ones that have citric acid and calcium chloride in them do tend to have like a bit of a metallic-y kind of taste, but pick whatever tomatoes you like the best. These are gonna do just fine for me today. Before I get started making the sauce, I'm gonna start the water for my pasta. Now that that's started, I'm gonna start making the sauce here in this pan. So a good amount of olive oil to start out. The olive oil is really important because it helps extract the maximum amount of flavor from the garlic, and that's just gonna flavor the whole sauce. So I'm using every last drop of this little can. And then I'm just gonna put the heat on medium-low and just sweat the garlic a little bit. I definitely don't want it to burn. That's very important. I like to pre-chop a bunch of garlic at once and then freeze it, because it means that on busy weeknights like this, I don't even have to bust out a cutting board for dinner. I'd say like 6 to 8 cloves for one big can of tomatoes is about right, but you can adjust that to taste. I'm not a fan of the pre-chopped garlic that you buy and keep in the fridge, but if you chop your own garlic and then freeze it, you will not notice a difference in something like this. If you're using it fresh, like in a salad, I still use fresh cloves of garlic, but if I'm cooking it, frozen garlic is great. So I'm just gonna let that soften up a little bit, kind of mellow out. I'll start to smell the garlic, and then I'm gonna add some chili flakes, maybe like a 1/4 teaspoon. And this is gonna take about a minute maybe. So I'll start squeezing my tomatoes. I do like the texture of tomatoes when they're squeezed by hand rather than blended in a food processor or a blender. But if you're not into this kind of activity, you can definitely use a hand blender or a regular blender. You can chop them if you want. I don't love chopped. I don't know why. It just doesn't feel as hearty. And I'm all about hearty. Okay, so that took all of about 30 seconds. Before the garlic gets any kind of browning on it at all, I'm gonna dump in the tomatoes. And I know I made another bowl dirty, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this up a little bit just to bring it to a bit of a bubble. And at this point, I'm gonna add almost a full teaspoon of salt because I know it's gonna need it. And then once it comes to a little bubble, I'm just gonna turn it down low. At this point, if I had fresh basil, I would add it, but I don't. What I absolutely will not do under any circumstance is add dried basil. I cannot stand the flavor of dried basil. My mom was a little heavy-handed with the dried basil in our spaghetti sauce as a kid. Sorry, Mom, I love you, but I don't want any dried basil anywhere. All right, now that's bubbling. I'm gonna turn it back down. So this is mostly done. It just needs a little bit of time now, and the water isn't even boiling yet for my rigatoni. So we're way ahead of the game, and we've only been cooking for 5 minutes. I'm only cooking for 2 people tonight, and so I'm gonna use about half of this bag of rigatoni. And this is enough sauce for this whole bag. So that means I get to put some in the fridge when I'm done. And I can use it tomorrow for something like maybe just some chicken breasts or something. I can throw the sauce over top of chicken, put some cheese on it, and that'll be a whole nother dinner. It's about half a bag. Rigatoni's in. I set the timer for 12 minutes. I'm just gonna walk away for a bit. My pasta is done. This is a bit of a thicker, kind of a higher quality one, so it took about 12 minutes. You just follow the instructions. You know what to do. And I forgot to mention, I always salt my water really well whenever I'm cooking pasta. Watch my summer spaghetti video if you want to hear the story about that. And once it's done, I always like to reserve some of the water just in case we need it. As I mentioned, this amount of sauce will do like a whole bag of noodles. So I'm going to take some of it out and save it for later. But I'm going to give it a taste first. Yum. Okay, it needs a bit more salt. If you do have some time on your hands, like say you want to get dinner done really quickly so that you can do something else, like do a workout or just shower or do other home stuff, it's a really good idea to make this and then turn it off and walk away. If it sits for like an hour, just off heat, it gets so much better. The garlic flavor really mellows out and you don't get that like obvious garlic flavor, but it's great as is. The longer it sits, the better. Obviously, we love a fridge cook. The other half of this that we put in the fridge overnight is going to be even better tomorrow. But, you know, just do what you can. Sometimes we don't have all the time, so we just have to make the dinner. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take half of this out. About half, I'm not measuring. And just throw these nudes in. And I probably won't need any of the water actually, but it never hurts to keep some just in case. This sauce isn't super, super thick. It's just, it's actually just right. It's pretty much perfect. So it's thick enough that it's clinging to the noodles. I love rigatoni because those tubes, you know, those tubes just get nice and filled with tomatoey goodness. And because we squeeze the tomatoes, it's still got some texture, so there might be like a big juicy hunk of tomato that gets lodged inside one of those rigatonis, and that's excellent. I always like to finish things off with a little bit of cheese. I like to buy a whole hunk of Parmesan cheese and then grate it in the food processor or the blender because I love the knobbly texture that you get that way. And I'm going to put a little bit in here now, and then I'll obviously bring more to our table so we can add to our own bowls. But a little bit in the mix now just really helps that sauce stick. All right, that's it. Don't mind my unconventional scooping system here. Oops. A little extra cheese for me. Thank you very much. And if you recognize my little cheese container, Farmer's Fridge, if you're ever in an airport in the US, look for the Farmer's Fridge. It's so good. Okay, ready to dig in. The only downside of rigatoni is that you can't really eat it with a spoon. And the spoon is by far the coziest eating utensil, in my opinion. There's really nothing to say here. It's just really good pasta with marinara sauce. And it's so nice to have a homemade sauce in like 15 minutes or whatever that was. It really doesn't take long. And good high quality tomatoes are more expensive than cheap tomatoes, but they're still cheaper than expensive sauce. So it tastes better, it's a bit cheaper, and it's super easy to make. You can't go wrong. And honestly, I don't even miss the basil. I hope this becomes a go-to for you on those busy weeknights, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.